Yo, what's up? Okay, so for some reason I thought that question 100 was the last one, but it's not. So I'll be making a few more of these videos. But today, going over 94 to 102. Okay, so let's begin. So 94, on the number line above, the distance between x and y is 1. Okay, so what is the distance in units between y and the midpoint of x and z? So let's be careful of this because here it's saying you need to find the distance between this, y, and this. Okay, and now, so you have to find out what the midpoint of x and z is. So x and z, midpoint is halfway point, right? So let me just mark that here. Let's call this m. Okay, so the distance from x to z, what is that? It's 1 plus 2, that's 3. So midway would be half of 3. So that would be 1.5. So that means that right here, from x to this is going to be 1.5. You could also say from m to z is 1.5. Okay, but if that's 1.5, but I know that x to y is 1, so then that means that to make the remaining piece, that's got to be half, right? So it's going to be 1.5 minus 1, that's going to be 0.5. Okay, so that's got to be E. Okay, well, screensaver. Okay, so then it's going to be that, and just look at the picture. The picture is not drawn to scale, so be careful with that, right? You should go by the numbers. Okay, so 94 is done. 95. Okay, so we need to find the percent that the price of a cup of coffee increased if its price was increased from 1.25 to 1.35. Okay, so you might have seen this in your middle school or something, right? It's called like percent change, and it's like change relative to the original, right? So um, there's like a whole lesson with this you can do, but just for now, think about this percent change as like the change from the original to the before and the after over the original. Okay, so what was the original? So it says from, so it's 1.25 to 1.35, so the change is positive, right? So that change is going to be 10 cents, so it's going to be 0.1 or 0.10, and then the original is 1.25. So that's going to be 1.25 here. Okay, and now you have to find the percent change of this, so you just got to find out what that is, right? I don't need that 0, so I'm just going to do, this is equal to, you jump this decimal like this, so it's going to be 1 over 12.5. Okay, so now we just divide this. So 1 divided by 12.5, and if you do this, you're going to get 8. Okay, and how did I know that? This is half of a quarter. In a quarter, there's 4, right, in a dollar. So a half means that you're going to double that, right? So it's going to be 8. Okay, let me see here. 96. What will be the total surface area in square inches of the pyramid, including the square base? Okay, and yeah, so the key word is surface area, the total surface area, and the shape of this thing, of this figure. So it's a pyramid with a square base. So the topic is called nets, right? So if I take the pyramid and I were to unwrap it, right, and it becomes a two-dimensional figure, and it has a square base, right? So that base is going to determine, it's going to look something like this, okay, right, when you unfold it, okay? And we know that these pieces, these four triangles will be congruent, right? So now to find the total surface area, that means you just have to find the area of each of these 5 pieces and add them, right? So, but I said that these 4 triangles are congruent, so you just find 1, multiply that by 4, and then you add it to the area of that, right? And then the base, the square base is, I mean, it's a square, right? So then now looking at this is one of these triangles. This piece is the side of the square, right? So that's going to be 10. So that means that the square is going to be 10 squared, so which is going to be 100. So 100 plus 4 times one of these triangles, the area of one of the triangles, and that's 1/2 base times height. The base is 10, the height is 12. Half of 12 is 6. 6 times 10 is 60, so it's going to be this. So 4 times 6 is 24, so this is 240 plus 100. It's got to be G. Okay. 97. So another percent change question. So percent increase, they're telling us an increase. So use the same formula. I said change over original, okay? So the OG. So then that means that the original is going to be 6.25, and then the change was, they tell you it's positive 2. right? So it's going to be this. So 6.25 to 6.75, that's going to be 50 cents. So it's 0.5. Okay. So now you just got to do this math. Okay. And then let me see if we can take some shortcuts. So we take the 0 away. And now we're going to use that trick again. You're going to multiply the top and bottom by 10. That's the same thing as shifting this to decimal to the right one spot. So this is equal to 5 over 62.5. Okay. And now you can do this math, right? So we can do 5 divided by 62.5 like this. You could also simplify this more by dividing by 5, but let's just do it like this, okay? So here, 62.5, I'm going to jump this 1, jump this 1. So it's going to be like this, and then we might need more zeros, so let's try that. So here it's, let's see from the choices here, right? So this thing, 62.5 times 10, that's going to be like 6,250, right? So like half of that will be like 3,000 something. So I don't think it's going to be that. We could try it's either like 7 or 8, right? So let's do this. So here we could do 625 times, if we did it, let's try 8, right? I'm thinking 8 because these are zeros already, right? And if I had a 7 here, I'm going to get a 5. So it's probably not going to be that. So let's try 8. So then this is going to be 8 times 5 is 0. So it's 40. 16 plus 4, 20, 0, 2, 48. There you go. So it's got to be, yeah, you do this math, it's got to be this B. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Next. All right. Terrell played 5 computer games and earned the mean score of 8 points per game. Okay, so he played 5 games, right? And so there are 5 numbers. I don't know these numbers, so I'm going to give these letters variables. So watch this. I'm going to call this x sub 1 plus x sub 2 plus x sub 3 plus x sub 4 plus x sub 5. Okay? And why am I adding this? Because it says mean, right? And if I'm taking the mean of these numbers, and there was 5, so that means this over 5 is equal to 8. Okay? And then it also tells you that the mean for the first 4 games, and the first 4 is right here, okay? But then you'd have to divide by 4 instead, right? So here, let me just look at this first equation, and I can find the sum of the first 5, the sum of the 5, right, by multiplying both sides of this equation by 5. So that's going to be 40 is equal to the sum of the first 5. So x1 plus plus x5, okay? And they're asking you to find out what x sub 5 is, right? So let me just write this, x sub 1 plus x sub 2 plus x sub 3 plus x sub 4 plus x sub 5. And I said that x sub 1, the average of the first 4, so x1 to x sub 4, over 4, that's got to be 7, right? So then if I multiply both sides by 4, you're going to get 28 is equal to this. So this thing's got to be 28. So 28 plus somebody is equal to 40. That somebody, the guy we want, is 12. Okay, and that's, yeah. Okay, 99. Okay, Leon bought enough oranges to fill 4 bags. Each bag contains 8 oranges. Okay, so he has 4 bags. He buys 4 of them, and each one of them has 8 oranges. So technically, he buys 8 times 4, which is 32 oranges. Okay, and how much was this cost? Sloppy. Okay, was $11.52. Right? So that means that $11.52 for 32 oranges. Okay? Now, how much would Liam pay for 42 oranges? So to solve this, you can find set up a proportion. Oranges are on the bottom, so I put the 42 on the bottom, and I have to find out what X is, the total price. Okay? But let me show you a little more intuitive way. It's similar to the other sections. We talked about averaging prices, right? And you're finding like unit rates, right? So if I'm saying that he paid $11.52 for 32 oranges, I can do this math, right, to find out the cost for 1 orange. Why would I want to do that? Because if I were to solve this problem using cross multiplication, I don't want to do that, okay? And these numbers aren't that nice. Okay, so you could find this answer by doing this and you multiply by 42 to get x. But if I notice that from 32 oranges to 42 oranges, so that's 10 oranges more. So if I can find the price of 1 orange, multiply that by 10, then all I got to do is add that answer to this, because that's for 32 oranges. Okay, so let's try that. It's a nice trick. So here I have to find out the cost of one orange. So 11.52 divided by 32, like this. All right, and then put the decimal here. 32 goes into 115. Let's see, like 32 times 3, that's 96. So let's try this, okay? So 96, 15 minus 6, that's going to be 9. And I borrowed here, it's going to be 1, right? So this is okay because this difference is less than 32. So I know that 3 is the max that can fit in. Okay, so now 119, and you bring down the 2, and now 32 goes into 192. How much? Well, I know 64, right? 64 doubling that. I'm just comfortable with this, right? Because it's like a power of 2. That's a tip. Maybe it'll be good for you to remember that too, right? So 64 doubling, adding 64 to that is 128, and then you add 64 again. That's got to be 192, okay? But there are two 32s in 64, so if I'm doing this 3 times, then that means the total there will be a 6 times, right? So that's got to be 0.36. Now, what does this 0.36 mean again? That's the price for one orange. So for 10 oranges, I multiply that by 10. That means I shift this decimal by 1 to the right, so it's going to be 3.6 for 10 oranges. So $3.60 has to be added to this. So I do 11.52 plus 3.6, 2, 5, 11, 2, 5. It's got to be 15.12, which is choice B. Okay, 100. Okay, this is not bad. All right, so this is just dividing. So you do 3.6 divided by 0.018. I don't have to put that outside 0, right? And then we are going to jump this 3 spots, right? And then we got to jump this 3 spots to make this a whole. And then we're going to put that directly above here. Okay, so I'm going to be a little neater here because the previous questions also had decimal division, but I was being a little sloppy. Okay, and now look. Now you think of this as 18 wholes, right? 18 goes into 36 twice. So that's going to be 2 and then 0, 0. It's going to be 200. So it's got to be H. Okay. 101. Okay, a tank with a 500-gallon capacity. So let me draw a picture. This whole thing is 500. Currently contains 75 gallons. So let me say that this is up to 75. Okay, so that means that the remaining here is going to be the difference between that. So that's going to be 425. I'm just playing with this, right? Let's just continue reading. Additional water is poured into this tank at a rate of 5 gallons per minute. Okay, so after 45 minutes of adding water, so this rate is 5 gallons per minute, right? So, and he's doing this for 45 minutes. So to find out how much extra water is being added, you just multiply these. But let's continue reading. What percentage, because it's another percentage question, of the tank's total capacity will be filled? Okay, so it's 75 plus the amount that additional for refill, right? I mean, additional fill. So that means it's going to be 45 times 5. Okay, so let's do that. 5 times 5 is 5. 2, 4 times 5 is going to be 225. So 225 extra gallons is being added to here, right? So it's 225. 225 plus 75, that's 300. 300 out of what's the total container again? 500, right? So to find the percent, you can just divide this, but look, some tricks. 2 zeros on top, and on the bottom, we cross that out. It's got to be 3/5, and you could just do 3 divided by 5, but that's a common fraction. You should know the decimal of. That's got to be 60%. C. Okay, last question. Misha wants to use ribbon to make 2 straps for a backpack. Okay, the ribbon costs $5 a yard. Great. Okay, if each strap requires this much yards of ribbon, how much will Misha pay for the ribbon? Okay, so one strap is 1 1/4 yards, right? That's how much I need. A backpack has 2 of them, so I have to multiply that by 2, so double that, right? So 1 1/4 plus 1 1/4, that's going to be 2.5 yards. So I need this much for one backpack, okay? But each yard is $5. So that means I do this, 2.5, because that's the decimal form of that, 2.5 times 5, okay? And if you do this, here's a trick. You could do 2.5 the same as saying 2 plus a half, and you multiply that by 5, and then distributive property. This is done mentally, right? So it's going to be 10 plus half of 5, which is 2.5, so it's going to be 12.5, which is going to be H. Okay, all right. So stay tuned for the other sections, okay? I need to sleep soon. Bye.